Hello, today we are going to be making beef gyudon for the 100-mile diet. For the ingredients of the beef gyudon, we're going to be using half an onion, beef obviously, green onions, some pickled red ginger to garnish, 1 tablespoon of olive oil, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 2 tablespoons of cooking sake, and 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, 3 eggs, and lastly, some rice. Alright, so why this dish? This dish, in my opinion, is very good for gaining weight, which is what I'm always trying to do. And what this dish will look like is, I think I'm going to be going for a cake approach, as in like a birthday cake. I have an idea in my head, and we'll see if we'll be able to resemble that in real life. So I'm going to be cutting up this onion like so, like this. And I'll get back to you when I'm done doing that. Alright, we're also going to be cutting the green onions like so. These aren't going to be used until the very end to garnish with the pickled red gingers. So just cutting like so. They don't have to be too large. In fact, about that size is just how I like it. Alright, so I finished cutting my onions, and now we're going to be cutting the meat. There is a certain way I like to cut the meat in my personal approach. Is I layer them all up like so, just to save time when cutting and to make sure all cuts are more even than they probably would be. So like this, we're going to be cutting a diagonal one like this, and then another diagonal one like this. So, like so. And then one more. Easy peasy. So we have our strips of meat on our meat cutting board. And now we will get to the frying pan. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is pour in the olive oil. Sorry for the stutter, I just couldn't get the name. Alright, next thing we're going to do is turn the actual element on, have a clean pair of tongs, and then we're going to scrape all the onions in, like so. Just get the cutting board and push them all in. Now you may think that's a lot of onions, but onions are one of the primary ingredients of this dish, besides from the rice and also the beef. So you're just going to kind of mix them around, and you're not going to throw the beef in until they get nice and tender. So we'll see you when they do that. Alright, while those onions are cooking, you can go ahead and get your 3 eggs and crack them into a cup. 1, 2, 3, like so. And then you're going to want to get a whisk, or in my case a fork since I don't have a whisk, and just mix them together. Like so. And don't forget to stir your onions just so they can get coated in that nice oil and also cook relatively evenly. You may ask, what is my actual criteria, my own personal criteria for when I cook food? Honestly, as long as it tastes good and is edible, I'm happy with it. The presentation is just more of a bonus to make me feel good. So, yeah. The onions are looking rather good, so we're going to go ahead and throw the meat and sugar on. Another thing is, how do I make sure I meet my criteria? Well, it's honestly pretty easy, as I just follow the instructions on if I'm copying a recipe from a website. I just make sure I follow whatever they say 100%, and it usually turns out just fine. So what I'm doing now is laying down the individual strips because I don't want a blob of meat. So I'm just doing this, and once we get all this done, which will be very shortly, I will add sugar on top. Okay, since now all the meat's in, we're gonna sprinkle some sugar around, make sure it's evenly distributed, relatively speaking. You may think this is a lot of sugar, but I've eaten this dish before and it doesn't taste too sugary at all. It adds a very nice texture to the meat. And once you get it stirred around with all the onions, it is very good. We're going to turn the heat back up. And once the meat is no longer pink, we'll catch it back then. Alright, once the meat is no longer pink, we're going to be adding all the other sauces. So first thing we're going to add is the sake cooking sauce. Just going to sprinkle that in there like so. Then we're going to add the shoishu, the soy sauce. And then lastly, one thing I did forget to mention in the ingredients list, we're going to be adding 2 tablespoons of mirin. So 1, 2. There we go. This is what it looks like. This is mirin. Yeah, that's one thing I did forget to mention. And then we're going to turn it back on to medium to low heat to get this nice and soaking in there. So when it's nice and simmering like so, we are going to be adding the egg in. Make sure you just stir it lots to make sure that every little bit absorbs that nice sauce that you put in. So now we're going to be adding in the egg. Try and, it doesn't really matter, but try and have it evenly distributed because we're going to be mashing them up anyways. So there's the egg. Turn that back up to medium. And then once you start seeing it to cook, you're just going to be stirring it around. As gross and unappetizing as this egg, onion, beef mixture looks, it is actually very delicious. And a very unique flavor with all the ingredients paired together. So as you can see, the egg is starting to cook. Don't want it on too high because you don't want to burn it. So just kind of keep moving it around as it cooks on that medium heat. So when you can tell the egg is all cooked, with it not being super liquidy, you can go ahead and, this is my plating idea, get a bowl of rice, get your plate, and top it on up like a sandcastle. Okay, so here we are with our nice little sandcastle of rice. And my idea, we're going to actually remove the center of it, try and make the best circle you can, and just throw this rice back in the bowl. I wouldn't say you have to make too deep of a hole, but more or less just like a little pool that gravy would go into. Like so. Next thing you're going to want to do is, first off, fill that little hole with some nice gyudon. And now place gyudon all around the rice. Get your green onions, my bad, and sprinkle them all over. Like some sprinkles. Not too much. And then, for the second garnish, you're going to want to get your red pickled gingers. You don't want a lot on because they are very strong, and too much will take away from the main flavor of the dish. But they do look very nice with that red color on top of everything else. And obviously some in the middle. But obviously, depending on how much you like them, you can put as much as you want on. So I think that amount is good. And lastly, this is purely optional, but these are chili flakes. These are not in the recipe, but I just love these. They make the dish very spicy. So I'm gonna sprinkle some on top, just because I really like these guys. And they do give it some more depth, contrasts, all of that. Nice visually pleasing stuff. Like so. So here I am with my final dish. I think it looks very appetizing. So for the last part of the questions, I think I showed skills in the plating, as it looks very nice and creative with rice, with the ingredients of rice, beef, onions, and all that garnish. I believe this because it just looks very visually pleasant. Something I would want to improve on is or how I record my video, because I had to tape my phone to many places because no one could record for me. So that's not really the cooking part, but it's a part of the cooking for the video, so I want to improve on the recording. My goals to improve is find something to record it better with. And yeah, with some hot ocha, otherwise known as tea, this meal, or this cake, is a cake I would definitely want to have seconds of.